Hi friends, I'm back from Maddie's house. I had explained on a community post that I decided to take a break because while there I wasn't feeling very creative, plus staying for 10 days I didn't want to bring everything. Although I did bring my camera, my mic and everything, the setup wasn't ideal and I wasn't getting great sleep, which meant my willpower bank was limited. And when I have like 60% willpower, it tends to go to training and not necessarily filming. I'm so sorry. Others are reverse, but I'm at a non-negotiable state when it comes to my strength training. So I decided to then take a break from the filming for a week and we're back with another eyeshadow tutorial video. I think August is the calm before the storm. We are expecting a lot of new releases. Holiday stuff is already leaking. It's kind of crazy. And I thought perhaps we can take the rest of this month to dive back into eyeshadow tutorials and use palettes that we wanted to see again. And this one being the industrial palette from Isamaya. And I'm also considering starting a YouTube membership gig. As much as I love tutorials, I understand that not quite as popular as reviewing new products, and I'm trying to find that delicate balance, right? Because the YouTube algorithm and YouTube audience in general loves the new, but there is a smaller niche that appreciates using what you already have, and perhaps I'll dedicate membership options to that type of content in addition to lives and just more random videos that might not do as well on the YouTube general algorithm thing. And if it's your first time clicking on my face, hi, I'm Alicia, an online coach who specializes in flexibility, bodyweight strength tools to help those establish sustainable nutrition and movement habits. I like to work with those who need that initial routine, and I also love to do eyeshadow palette tutorials. And many of you have requested that I dive back into the industrial palette, so everything on my face will be listed down below in the description box. I will also post the original video up in the card to see the swatches and everything else included in the industrial collection, the brow lac, the rubber lash, and the lip lac, which I also... Where did I put it? Oh, it's right in front of me. The lip lac, which I have on now, a black cherry tinted lip gloss with a little bit of plumping, and jewelry. The lip gloss has jewelry. With all those details out the way, why don't you come in a little closer? That's enough. Applying Linda's eye base, you can go ahead and apply your favorite eyeshadow base. I've been liking this one. It has a silicone-like consistency, which makes the surface area smooth for blending. Not particularly tacky, however. If you prefer a tackier base, especially if you're using textures that we'll dive into, like the ones that exist in industrial palette, maybe you'll experiment with something like a concealer, or again, something with a little more adherence. You could also use Pat's wand, which I have somewhere. I just forgot to pull it out from like the sea of makeup bags that are just floating in around me, and I feel like this. Briefly covering the palette's anatomy, we have several textures in here, two being like a cream mousse kind of latexy type of a texture, the more transparent overlay textures, hardier flaky metallic finishes. And I had said this in my monthly favorites that although you have a lot of colors here, it's pretty earthy, I think, overall, given the amount of bronzes, coppers, and greens. You have like those flashes of duochrome, which can add lovely character to the looks, but overall, I think approachable for the most part. If you wanted to go ultra simple, then you can choose any of these colors here. I believe leather and diesel. Again, they're like these putty textures that you can place all over your lid, under the lash line, and create a beautiful smoky eye. And because they're lightweight in terms of the blend, I feel really nice to just feather the edges, so it's not completely black. There's a little bit of translucency there, and I think that putty texture lends itself to be a little easier to blend than like a powder. Then you have these softer shades that are duochrome in nature but can be really nice as a sparkly effect. And then you have the more literal colors here that show as they appear in pan. You see here the more olive and the more bronze tones, but they have really nice sparkle to them. You can see that this color has the gold sparkle and this one has gold sparkle too, but it's more of like a browny bronzy base. Off the bat, you can apply those all over your lid with a finger. You can even apply it under the lash line. Let's try Cuprum here, and I'll apply this first with my finger. So this is more of an antique gold, and you see right off the bat it has a lot of shine, but pretty easy to place on the lid even with a finger. If you wanted to take a brush, you could take a shader like one as I have here, wiggle it across back and forth to get nice product pickup, and then lightly tap it on the areas that need a little more shadow if you wish to place it there. And notice that I'm not necessarily swirling and twirling just yet. We're saving that when adding another shade. I'm simply tapping because the tapping itself will blend the edges for you, right? So we already have a really nice lay down of color. One way to go, if you like, is to take one of the putty shades, and I'll take Diesel because I think this midnight navy will look really nice with the antique gold, and you can place it on the lash line as I am here. And I am using a flat shader brush, small enough for the detail work, but wide enough so it picks up enough color, and placing the color across my lash line won't take an eternity. If you like, you can now whip it lightly here. I have to look forward to actually get the angle right because I always never nail it. And once you have the angle here, I like to pull it upwards. You can then close and pull it in just to kind of cover the rest of the wing. You don't have to take it as far as I did. Unfortunately, sometimes I fall victim to my own plan, self-sabotage, and it ends up being a bigger wing than I initially wanted, but you know, it works out. I think it nice because it has that midnight color. You have the antique on the lid. You could apply any of these other shades. For instance, you can take the more bronzy shade here and tap it on the outer part of the lid. If you wanted, we can take the more olive tone, which I think will pair lovely with the antique shade we have on the lid, and just lightly tap it on that portion that doesn't have a lot of shadow, but now you have a really nice overlap between the olive shade and then the antique gold one. And now taking another brush, one that's fluffier in nature without any product, so we can buff the edges of that color. You might be freaking out because I just took like a metallic shade very high on the crease. You don't have to do this step, but if you wanted the shadow to travel a little higher or introduce another shade, then you could overlap them in that way. Wanted to go in with one of the duochromes, which I think lovely here with the antique shade, and I'm going with, well, we could go with this shade here. We could go in with Grip. You see from the pan, it has a duochrome finish, and placing that on the inner part of the lid, as well as it serving as our highlight shade. Overlapping it with Cuprum, the first shade we put on the lid, and then bringing it around the inner corner. And you know how I love to just add all the shades. Why not using Sweat here that has like a beautiful purple flip on the lower inner part of the lash line, and taking Cuprum again on the lower lash line. You can keep this bare, but I typically like to apply on the lower lash line. What's usually on the lid, it could be a different color, you know, to mix it up. I like to apply my face makeup first, but you do run the risk of a little bit of just trailing fallout, so have your concealer brush or sponge on standby just so you can do any cleanup. Now you see how glossy that looks. There's a lot of sparkle there. Might not be for everyone, as I understand that people rather use a matte in their crease and they don't like anything sparkly or metallic-y in their crease, but because of how these are formulated, I think they give off really nice twinkle and appear multidimensional when you place this type of a texture from lash line to close to the brow bone. Always know if you have a pressed or loose powder on standby. I have Pat's under eye blurring powder here for when I did my concealer. You can take a blender brush with a little bit of that powder, and if you wanted to blend down any of the shades you applied here, just so they can appear softer, right? Again, you don't have to go this high towards the brow. You can use your loose or pressed powder just to lightly buff it down and blur the edges even more. Off to eye look number 2. Come to think of it, I don't think I completely committed to flesh yet. Let's go in with flesh. It's just outrageous copper here. And I'll make this a lot simpler and place it on the lid. I'm using a finger first so I can get the majority of the color on first, and then we'll go in with a shader brush to then lay down more product. And like I did on the first eye, I'm tapping in and under my crease first. And no, you can shape the shadow as you like. So for instance, if you want it to travel higher, then naturally you'll bring it up higher. If you just want the border to have this scatter effect, then you can just keep it as is. Again, I wouldn't necessarily swirl and twirl with this type of a texture. I would just let it naturally travel as you apply on the lid and on the crease. Same color. Now on the lower lash line, I'll trail it here right underneath. Again, you don't have to take the same color, but I do think quite nice if you just totally commit to one and seeing what it has to offer when applied both on lid and lower lash line. Definitely going in with heat. The other duochrome light shade here, this now on the inner part of the eye. And we could also go in with flesh. I think this is flesh. Flesh is like your general sparkly disco ball shade. Kind of reminds me of Astral Solstice from Midnight Sun, Pat McGrath. But this one's a little more chill. It doesn't have the same type of texture, but it has a similar twinkle effect. In fact, if you want it, you can take flesh with your finger and tap it over whatever shadow it is. Again, because it's translucent, it will just bump up the twinkle effect. It won't change the color, but really amp up the glitz. Now, usually if I was just going out as such, I will apply mascara, but because it's actually easier for me to apply falsies, I'll do just that and see you back here in a minute. Here is round number 1. We took a little bit of a crazy route using as many shades as we possibly could on one eye, but starting off with simple possibilities. The antique shade on the lid, then maybe adding one of the putty shades as a wing liner, and introducing different shades on portions of the eye that could use a different color that can contribute to the overall look, but you don't necessarily have to go that route. And the second eye, much more simple in approach, more or less using one shade for lid and the lower lash line, another for the inner corner highlight, and using flesh, that beautiful scatter effect shade on both eyes, just to demonstrate how versatile that texture is, where no matter what shade you apply it on, it just gives you a little more light amplification, if you will. And just a note about the formula, no, it's not going to be smooth like a Pat McGrath metallic where you can buff out the edges smoothly. There's a little bit of a scatter here, especially when you start to pull it out. If you're pulling it out from lid to crease, it's not going to be as smooth as a traditional metallic shade. But once you let it settle, I think it just has a lovely effect on the skin. Beautifully bright, and I think pretty easy to work with. Again, Once you get used to this formula and align with its expectations, I think you'll be able to create beautiful looks that are both impactful and chill at the same time. So let's get this off, roll into demo number 2, and I'll see you back here in a minute. Round 2, eye primer update. Apply the LYS concealer this time just to see what differences that presents. We went with the gold and the copper last round. Maybe we can dive straight into the putty shade, the leather shade, to set up one of these. These are like your wham bam silvery like gunmetal metallics that I think are just so pretty. I'm taking my Tansedio Kolinsky brush that is great with both creams and liquids, and the brush head is just big and wide enough to get leather on very quickly. Oh, that sounded funny. First using that brush to get majority of the color on the lid, and then using my Rephr number 15 to just fluff a little bit through the edges. And why not placing leather on the lower lash line as well as prep for one of these gunmetal steel shades. And just so you can see, applying leather by itself, lashes, mascara, however you want to go, gives you the smoky eye right away. But with Whip, my goodness, Whip has a little more texture. It just is like this heavy duty gunmetal metallic that I feel will benefit greatly if applied on top of leather. Like this, woo, the amount of sparkle the texture has without it being overwhelmingly challenging to deal with, right? You saw that I just simply pat it on, and leather offers like a nice adherence to this type of shadow where all you need is to finger pat it down and the flakes in here successfully latch on to the putty texture of leather, and it just melts seamlessly. You saw I just, again, fingers only, tapped it, and the shadow just kind of melted into the feathered edges of the leather shade. And just look at that shine. It's crazy. I will, however, use a smaller shader brush to carefully punch on Whip on top of leather on the lower lash line. Yeah, because I do think that takes a little more precision there. And around the corners, if I see that needs refining, I'll just use that brush to make that smoother. Initiator, why not? This lime green as our inner corner moment. You can go either way, with flesh, with heat, with this one here. I keep forgetting the name. Grip. Any of these will work, right? But if you wanted to bump up the color profile of whatever look you're creating, then adding one of the more vibrant shades on the inner corner will do just that. What are we gonna do on this side? Let's do a halo eye moment. So taking this color here, brass, on the outer and inner portions of the lid. Is this brass? Have I correctly identified this shade? I have no idea. The way the label is on the palette is like flipped, and my brain is not working well right now, so I don't know if I'm saying the right corresponding shade to how it looks on. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, tapping in, saving, swirling, twirling for later, and now doing initiator as the standout lid shade in between brass. What a great pairing. You got the more earthy tone olive on the outer portions of the lid and going in with the more vibrant chartreuse neon on the lid, on the center anyway. Picked up a little bit of brass. Don't know if it's called brass, but I'm going to keep going with that. Now with my Rephr, lightly, yes, because we just want to carefully manipulate the edges enough where it looks smoother across the upper crease here, using flicking motions to finish off that blend. If you want it, you can take initiator with your finger to dab a heartier serving of that color so it can appear more vibrant on the center of the lid. And why not doing the same thing on the lower lash line, replicating what we have here on the top. I'll start with initiator on the center of the lash line and then take brass on the outer and inner portions of the lower lash line. Inner corner, so many choices. Sweat, flesh, heat, We can even do motor. It's called motor. This is brass. Because I was looking at brass to put on the inner corner. Let's see how that works out. You know, it doesn't hurt, but just to try. Because what we can do is, if it's too hardy as an inner corner moment, I can apply heat on top just to see what that does. So I'm taking heat on top of brass. Not bad. It's like a little bit of a flame, like on the inner corner of my eye. And I think why not introducing an entirely different shade to the inner corner. We got all green here on the lid. All right, round 2 is complete. It's time to apply some lashes and I'll be right back. Round 3, because I did this, I believe, in my original video, applying leather first and then sweat on top. And the effect was just this beautiful blue reflect on the lid. Reflect. Going in with Diesel now, perhaps tough to tell unless they are next to each other, which one is more black versus navy. But I can definitely see the difference here in the mirror, maybe better in person than on camera, that there is a more distinct navy hue here from Diesel. In the same fashion, we applied leather using my Tansedio brush to apply the majority of the color on the lid, and the Rephr number 15 to wisp it through the crease. And again, this by itself, outrageously good. Taking one of these shades here, ooh, I think, let's do grip, see what that does. Oh, as you can see, that flip is further amplified by placing it over Diesel, and that putty texture just helps the adherence. Now with heat on the inner part, and I want to overlap that color. So pretty how heat just trails into grip. So nice. Now with Belt. Belt is like the translucent shades, but has a hardier undertone. I'm placing that on the outer part of the lid just to kind of see what that does. It offers a more grungier finish to the look for sure. You could have left it at Diesel, right, and just have that grip shade on top. So it just has that beautiful teal reflect. I am going in with Diesel on the lower lash line, however, maybe just 3/4 in. Then Belt here, in the same way I applied it on the outer lid here, I'm applying it on the outer lower lash line. And you know what? I think I want to do Machine. Machine is super flaky, a little tougher to pick up, but that steel silver finish, I think so pretty. So if you wanted, you could have applied Diesel first as we did, and then Machine on top. That could have been a thing, you know, but just spreading out as many options as I can. Eye number 1 is done. While I understand these look crazy, grungy, and intense, I will then pick a far more simpler route. So if you just wanted to go super chill, let's take Flesh just on the lid. And that offers, again, beautiful sparkle. Is non-committal. You don't need to add another shadow. You could just have this beautiful twinkle on the lid. See here, even from afar, it has this glass skin effect. Mascara and be done. Or just not wear mascara. Just this is pretty all on its own. If not on the lid, you could also just place this on the inner corner as a spotlight effect. Or you could take one of the metallic shades and use it as a wing liner. I'm taking the more bronzy shade. I believe this is Cuprum. Purposefully stopping at the edge of the lash line, because again, we want to go super simple, and I know I left the simplest look for the last demo. It's just how it is sometimes. And again, you can have that shade on the lid. I understand it might not be as intense if you are deeper complected than me. I would then go in with leather and maybe Cuprum on top if you wanted a little more intensity or hardier foundation, or just go in with your favorite pencil liner. But I think that's just like a softer look coming from this palette. Yes, not placing anything on the lower lash line and leaving it as is. Lashes, and I'll be right back. And here is the final round, demonstrating piling as many shades as we can together, specifically using the putty shade first and applying one of the duochromes on top. And then on the last demo, going as minimalist as possible, flesh on the lid and cuprum on the lash line. And just so you can see, this is how lip black wears if I don't reapply it. I'll reapply it now. Again, it leaves behind just a very light tint on the lip, but going in now with another dose, just so you could get an idea of how this works in real time. And yes, when it fades, the lips could look a little dead, but because of the black cherry tint, I think it does appear as I do still have some type of balm on the lip, but reapply as you think appropriate so it could look glossier and it has a little more color on the lips. But yes, this is the final round. I love how this one turned out, and you saw how easy it was to accomplish just using the flesh shade and then applying one of the metallic shades on the lid. Ever since I started using the industrial palette, I have been in love again with the textures, with the different finishes and the different colors, and it inspires me to just play, which I think is one of the most important elements of a palette. Yes, being beautiful in your eyes, right? Beauty in the eyes of the beholder, easy to use, creative, but something that also encourages creativity from the user's end and even influences them to go beyond their own comfort zone, right? Maybe from the get, when you order this palette, you were already like, ooh, this is something I usually don't wear, but let me give it a shot. And you ended up loving it because soon discovering that, again, these shades have an earthiness to them despite their vibrancy, despite the different textures included here. And it's just fun to discover different ways you can layer them, different combinations you can come up with, especially when using the putty shades as a base. That is by far one of my most favorite components of the palette, where you could use leather or diesel and then apply one of the duochromes on top where it appears shinier, more amplified. The flip is just hardier in that delivery, or going super simple and just applying, I know we got to do the flashlight, just applying flesh on the lid. The effect is beautiful, but it's so simple in approach. It's going to bring up a conversation like, what's on your lid? And you're like, well. So that is it, fam. Hopefully this video helped if you picked up this palette, you weren't quite sure about how to approach it, how to use the different colors. Hopefully this video provided a little more insight. Let me know what your favorite shades and combinations are down below. I'll see you down in those comments. And until then, fam, that is a wrap. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this video helped, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up or maybe consider subscribing to my channel. And until then, I will see you on here again with another review tutorial, eyeshadow palette extravaganza, or monthly fave. Take care, and I will see you again soon.